Hello, I'm Janna, and welcome back to the Crafty Corner. Today we have got the brand new Distress Tim Holtz watercolor pencils in the house. So we're going to be going through a few tips and tricks for storage techniques, and then we're going to be diving into a fun card with some Distress watercolor stamping. So let's dive right into things and see about building a unit for the gorgeous Distress watercolor pencils. So, two exciting things. First, we've got the brand new set of Distress watercolor pencils, and two, I was able to get my hands on this really cool pencil storage unit. And this was an Amazon find. And better yet, it's in black. So, we're going to be assembling this today and then organizing some of the brand new supplies that I just got my hands on. So, we're just going to set out these pieces and we're going to work through the first little piece of this together. These are pretty self-explanatory. There is a paper guide, but just a heads up, the pieces aren't labeled and you're going to have to rely completely on shapes. So these are pre-laser cut panels and they have little punch outs in them and tabs. You stick the tabs through the holes and then you take screws provided in the box to put all of these pieces together. One thing I really like about this storage unit is that it comes with its own screwdriver. So as you can see, there's some holes and slits at the side. This is where the screws go. Fortunately, it's pretty self-explanatory if you look for these slots, which mean a screw needs to go there. So we just take the pieces and we stick them together, and then we need to take a screw and put that into the slot and screw it down. I like to use my desk to brace these pieces as I'm assembling, and then just with the screwdriver, it's very easy to start screwing these things in place. So with a little patience and trying to spot it on the directions, it is relatively straightforward to do the assembly. So there we go. We've got that first screw in and that locks those two pieces together. Then we just make sure that the other pieces are still connected with the slot and peg method. And then we add our next piece. Again, just lining things up and putting that down. And I'm using the table to brace as we add the next screw in here. The piece that I'm currently assembling is going to be the bottom drawer on the unit. And I think that's going to be a great place to store used tools that I would need often for the card making and creative process. Okay, so we've got three sides of the drawer. And you can see those areas where the screws have been slotted in. Now, this is the drawer front. And that's going to go right here. But first, I want to add the drawer pull. We get this pretty neat kind of faux crystal metal drawer pull. It looks kind of vintage, so I like that. And we're just going to take the screw that has the flat end on it and add that to the drawer pull. All of the other screws have points at the ends, but there's one that does not, and that is the one that is going to be connecting to the drawer pull. So just be aware of that because nowhere in the instructions does it mention that there's one screw that's not quite like the others. All right, drawer pull attached. And now we can line this up and add the last couple of screws to the drawer front. So just taking that, placing it down, and quickly turning that in with the screwdriver. I do like that there isn't much resistance as you're placing the screws in when you're fastening the different pieces of the drawer or the box together. So it's not too terrible on the wrists. All right, let's get that last one in on this side. Okay, so just twisting that and making sure that drawer is nice and secure. So for the most part, we're going to be putting the rest of this on fast forward now that we've assembled this one drawer together. I will do my best to show you where some of the parts and pieces go, but the good news is the instructions really are pretty self-explanatory. Just check all of those little innies and outies, and it shouldn't be too bad for the assembly process. Okay, let's go ahead and put this part on fast forward. Here is the assembled unit. Now, right away, I don't like those raw edges of wood. It's not good. But you know what? Quick solution. We're going to simply paint those with some Distress Black Soot paint. If you don't like something, you can alter it. I looked everywhere online for a completely black unit, and this was the closest I could come. So, just with a little bit of distress paint, we can make those horrible, horrible edges simply go away. And that is the magic of being a maker. You can make things the way that you want them to look. If you don't like the reality you're in, simply change it. And in this case, we are changing the entire look and vibe of this unit with just a little bit of Distress Black paint. And look at that. The transformation is quite noticeable. Those raw edges, they just jump out at you from the unit and just, it doesn't work. Well, for me anyway, maybe someone else out there likes it, but for me, the raw edges just weren't cutting it. And on top of that, having the black media mat and other black accessories that go with all things Tim Holtz. I mean, look at the packaging of those texture pastes in the background. Black and white is really, it's the signature colors. And here, I just needed everything to match, but that's just me. I like things that are very matchy-matchy, and if I'm going to have full set syndrome, then I want my collection of supplies to look equally as good when they're in my craft room. And better yet, with this unit, since it's an open unit, it's going to be really easy for me to see where all of my supplies are. I'm finding more and more that if I can't see something, I'm a lot less likely to use it. So I'm looking for a lot more open storage solutions because I'm hoping that's going to give me that reminder, that little push to use my supplies. All right, let's put this on fast forward. Now that the paint is all dry, let's go ahead and start loading this with supplies. So these would be all of the distressed watercolor pencils. And I also pulled some other things that I think might fit pretty well into the unit, but let's sort the colored pencils first. I've decided that I wanted to group these into a section of 9 different parts. We're going to put reds and pinks in one area, then the oranges, the yellows, greens, blue-green, blue, purple, browns, and then neutrals. So I've got my categories, and we're just going to go through and sort things out. For the most part, I'm definitely going to be following the distress chart, but there's a few colors that I might recategorize just because of how they look on paper. But there are many different ways that you could sort these out, so I highly recommend sorting them in a way that makes the most sense to you. Okay, so just going through, let's see, let's go ahead and pick out the greens. This is fun. I actually love sorting and organizing almost as much as I love making. There's just something very satisfying about seeing everything neat and organized in a way that makes sense to you. That's just, I don't know, it's something I really enjoy about the process. And then, better yet, once it's all organized, it is so easy to grab the supplies that you're looking for when you're in that mood to make. And that is wonderful, because if you can't find something, it's hard to make with it. And my biggest goal this year is organization. I'm slowly getting my craft room more and more organized. After that big move last year, I'm still settling in and just haven't quite gotten things set up just right. But we are slowly getting there. Okay, let's see. We've got these. Pretty happy with that. Let's go ahead and start loading the unit. I'm just going to scoot these over a bit so we have room for the unit on camera. Oh, by the way, I'm totally using a different camera angle this time. I'm trying an over-the-shoulder shoot. And for that, I found a really cool adjustable telescoping tripod. And this seemed like the perfect time to try it out, since we're doing kind of an organizational and crafty video. All right, let's go ahead and start loading these in. So I've already put the neutrals at the bottom. There we go. We've our pinks at the top, and I'll definitely add in the reds. I'm still kind of working through my organizational process. There's the oranges. There we go. And then we'll scoop up the yellows. The yellows will be next. Let's see. There they are. Okay, I'll go in that slot. Already it's looking good. I love putting things in rainbow order. All right, here are the greens. Great. Next, we've got the blue greens. And then we'll go in with the blues. Perfect. And now we've got that handful of purples. And last but not least, we've got a lovely collection of browns. Yep, definitely loving the look on this. Now, I've got all that space, so I went looking for some other bottles that I could add in here. Here we've got some gilding flake paste, and we'll put that, let's see, we'll put that at the bottom. So the ones at the bottom aren't strictly Tim Holtz things, but they're things that I definitely use in conjunction with Tim Holtz products. That one would be the Glossy Accents by Ranger, and this is the Ranger Archival Ink Cleaner. And then, of course, we've got a bottle of Collage Medium. That's like the most used thing I have. We've got some alcohol ink blending solution, and I've got my Distress Crayon Brown brush that it's exclusively for grunging things. And I've also got a bottle of Distress Embossing ink. That's the dabber. Oh, it looks like I already stuck one in there. So cool. The dabber and the Distress Crayon Brown brush are going to share a slot. Now I've got 3 more spots, and I want to put my most used pastes up here, which would be the Texture Paste Opaque, the Texture Paste Translucent, and of course a bottle of Collage Medium. So there we go. That fills up things nicely, but I've still got this really cool drawer down here. I'm going to see if the tiny toolbox with the teeny tiny blenders is going to fit, because that would be perfect. Oh, yes, it fits. Perfect. That is just the right way to store those. Okay, so here we go. We have got storage. I mean, just look at that. We've got bottles, we've got our teeny tiny blenders in here, we've got a few pastes, and we've got the full set of those beautiful Distress watercolor pencils. This is going to be a great station for easy making. Now, let's get into some arty fun. So, of course, if we're looking at Distress watercolor pencils, then we're definitely creating something. So, we're pulling in Stamp Set Mini Bouquet CMS 269, and we're going to create a fun tag using the Distress watercolor pencils. We will also be pulling in the Stamp Set Tiny Toadstool CMS 377. We are going to be starting with some Distress watercolor stamping. This week, Tim had an absolutely amazing Distress watercolor pencil demo, and it reminded me of so many fantastic techniques. And of course, we're going to be playing around with a few of those. The best tip that I picked up from Tim is spritz your stamp first with water before applying the pencil. That works beautifully. As you can see, we're getting a lovely transfer from the pencil directly to the stamp. And that's just from a spritz or two from the Distress Water Sprayer. I love quick and easy tips because that makes creating so much more fun. But using some of the things that I learned, we're going to be creating a full tag, which we're going to be incorporating into a card. Now, for colors on the stamp, I've been using wilted violet, and then we've got some crushed olive. So we've got our stamp, we've got our colors. Let's go ahead and stamp that down and see how it looks. I am stamping on a Distress Mixed Media tag. All right, good for pressure and lift. Oh, there we go. Very, very pretty. So I'm definitely going to spritz that again, and we're going to add more color so I can get another stamping out of this. I probably could get a second generation stamping from this, but I really want to go with some bold colors. So that's why we're just coloring the stamp again for a second time. Okay. That is looking pretty good. So we'll be able to take that and stamp that as well. Okay, right here. Good. A little bit of pressure and perfect. So the plan is to build up a bit of a floral background, and then we will go in with the tiny toadstools. Now, one thing that was pointed out during the live is don't be alarmed. The pencils will stain red rubber. That was absolutely surprising. I had not really noticed they had stain, but they do. I guess I just kind of stamped and then put stuff away and didn't really think about it. But if you look closely at that first flower we did, you definitely can see the residual colors left over. But as far as I'm concerned, it's not a big deal because a lot of the time I'm just taking black archival soot and just stamping right over it. So I wouldn't necessarily notice the staining, but it's interesting. These pencils are loaded with color. Okay, so for this next one, I am using a bit of brushed corduroy, and we're just applying that to this stamp and adding that into our background. Now, I took a bit of the pigment off the bottom of the stamp because I want to get different heights of this particular floral piece. There we go. And just taking off a bit of the extra pigment allows me to control how much of the image gets placed down onto the tag. Okay, let's go in with this piece next. And for colors, we're going to be using a bit of squeezed lemonade and some twisted citron. I definitely wanted just like a dash of really bright yellow on this tag. Okay. And as you can see, again, the pigment, it just goes down there so strong. It's so vibrant. I love that. And with the control that the pencils give you, it's so easy to maneuver and get into the smallest spaces with details. And then, of course, if you dull the point on the pencil, you can always resharpen it. And that's just, it's great use and really, really fun to do this watercolor stamping technique. Okay, so we've got our wildflower. Let's go ahead. We'll stamp that right here. Okay, it's good. Ooh, really, really pretty. Let's go for that second generation. There we go. Not bad. So I'm pretty happy with our wildflower background. We'll just put our stamps away, and I'm going to give this a quick dry. That way we've got a nice ready surface for the next level of stamping. Okay, there we go. That is looking pretty dry. Now let's go ahead and pull in our next stamp set. Before pulling in that second stamp set, I do want to do just a little bit of touch up on some of the stamping. I got a couple of little empty spaces, but you know what? I can drag that color around just using the Ranger Tim Holtz Fine Detailer water brush. And just like that, I can move the pigment. And there we go. Like, it's so easy to fill in little gaps and move pigment around. I could even go back and add additional colors if I wanted to, but I think I'm pretty happy with this. All right, on to tiny toadstools. So let's see here. We're going to use this nice tall one, and I think I want a little short one off to the side as well. So we're just going to place that onto the stamping block, and I'm going to be stamping with Distress Archival Black Soot. This time we're going to be coloring our image, and then I'll be watercoloring it out using the Fine Detailer water brush. So there's our archival black soot, making sure that we've got plenty of ink on here. And we'll stamp that down right there. Oh, this is going to be cool. I love doing layered stamping. It is really fun, and I just love composing a little scene on a tag. Great. And let's go into that second stamp. More ink, giving it a good smush, making sure we got great coverage, and stamping it down. All right. So now that we have our stamped images, we are going to need to add some color. For colors, we're going to be pulling in, I think some barn door for the top of the mushroom, and gathered twigs. Oh, there's so many choices here. Lots and lots of fun, and just simple, easy coloring. We're not going for like super detailed coloring. We're just getting the pigment onto the paper, and then I will move that around with the water brush. Okay, there we go. Let's see here. What color is next? All right, I've got some brushed corduroy. Let's go ahead. We can add that to the underside of the mushroom. Next, let's go in with some gathered twigs, and we'll add that to the mushroom stems. Okay, so just scribbling, not really trying to get perfect coverage, just enough pigment down so they'll be really easy to maneuver with the water brush later. Okay, and let's go over here, go in with some scorched timber, and then a little bit more of the other browns. Good. And the next thing I'm going to do is add some shading around the base, just with some grass, and we're going to use some mowed lawn, maybe a dash of rustic wilderness or some twisted citron. I'm not quite sure, but just a little bit to add some variety. Okay. So let's go ahead and watercolor. After watercoloring with the water brush, I did go in with a dash of speckled egg to give us a beautiful blue background. Now we're going to pull in some of the smaller elements from tiny toadstools. I've got this little section here with some writing on it, and we're just going to add this in to make our background a little bit more interesting. So I'm going to be stamping with like second and third generation because I want this text kind of to fade in and out of our background. So again, using Distress Archival Black Soot and just filling in the gaps. As Tim would say, it's a little fill in the blanker. And that's just adding another level of interest to our background. Definitely happy with the way this is turning out. I just love stamping, and just having a chance to sit down and play is so fun. Okay. There. I'm definitely happy with that. Now let's go in and add just a little bit more visual interest with some of these teeny tiny little postmark things. So since we have the brand new mini Tim Holtz Distress inks for the latest colors, we've got the new Lumberjack Plaid, Uncharted Mariner, Lost Shadow, and Scorched Timber. So just going to ink that up and stamp that down here in the corner. I love the mini ink pads. They're always perfect for adding a dash of color, and they're so easy to store. Okay, so we've got that. Now let's switch that out for this little numbers thing, and we're going to stamp that using some Lumberjack Plaid. Okay, we've got the mini cube. Let's go ahead, add our ink. Lumberjack Plaid. Definitely my new favorite red. Okay. So let's take that, and we're just going to stamp that by that first little mark that we made. All right. Good. So we are done with the tag. Let's go ahead and build a card base. For our card base, we are going to be using an ideology backdrop and some distress black heavy stock. So for the card base, of course, we're going to be cutting this in at 5.5 by 4.25 inches. And for trimming, we will be pulling in the Tiny Tonic trimmer. All right, got my marks. We are good to go. Got the trimmer. And let's go ahead and slice that. I love this background, and I believe this is one of the ideology backdrops from last year's Halloween SKU. So that just seems perfect. It's got kind of a little bit of a swampy look. It's got a little bit of color. It's kind of marbled. That works out really well with the whole mushroom thing going on here. Now we're going to take the tag and we're going to be cutting this down to approximately 4.75 of an inch. That way I'll have enough space to layer this with a piece of distressed black heavy stock. All right, just double checking that measurement and marking it down before we go ahead and chop that with the tonic trimmer. All right. Might need just a little bit more. Yeah, I think we're still coming in about 4.75. Maybe we're down to 4.5, but it's going to work. Now we're just going to stick that on top of that black cardstock. And I'm not going to measure this one out. I'm just going to eyeball it. We're just going to take a pencil, mark that off. So I've got just about 1/8 of an inch of a border all the way around. And of course, we will just trim off the excess with the tonic trimmer. All right. Next, we're going to need some ATG tape, and then I can start stacking all of these layers together. So let's go ahead. We'll set the trimmer aside and add our adhesive. Ooh, definitely happy with the mushrooms. That is going to look so good paired with that kind of swampy background. All right. So just running the tape around the edges, and of course we'll do a couple of strips in the middle to make sure that we've got plenty of stick. There we go. All right, now we'll just line that up on the black cardstock. Good. I think that's going to work. Excellent. So now we need to go back with the ATG and add more tape to the back so we can stick the black portion onto our card base. Good. Just working all the way around. Excellent. All right. So we'll take that and we will stick that over here. Just trying to line things up as best as possible. There we go. Think we have got it. Yep. Okay. So we'll stick that down and then we will need to go in and find a sentiment. But do I want to add anything extra to the card? That's the question. And the answer is yes. This needs just a little bit of metallic bling. So for that, we're going to be pulling in some of the ideology metallic droplets. And we'll just put one in each of the 4 corners. So we're going to grab 4 of the smaller droplets and place one in each of the 4 corners. And of course, we're going to be going in with some collage medium to add that little drop of adhesive before sticking down our shiny additions. Okay, so let's go ahead and grab our pieces. As you can see, I definitely have a good stash of these. I absolutely love these, and I do put them on almost all of my cards at this point. I don't know, there's just something about that little extra metallic shine that I really, really like. So we've got some of the gold droplets today, and we're putting those in the 4 corners. There we go. Definitely really happy with the layers that we got on this card. We've got that really cool swampy background. We're highlighting the main focal point of the mushrooms with that black edge and just the stamping. It all works so well together. Loving the distress colored pencils and so happy to have that full set. Okay, we need a sentiment. And for the sentiment, we'll be pulling in the Tim Holtz Ideology Metallic Sticker Book, since that's going to give us an additional little splash of gold. And we've got the sentiment, enjoy today. And we'll just stick that right at the bottom. There we go. And that completes our Distress Colored Pencil card. Thank you so much for joining me here today at the Crafty Corner for some organizational tips and tricks, as well as sticking around to have fun creating with the full set of Distress watercolor pencils. I am so happy to have all the colors, and I look forward to creating many, many more cards. And until next time, happy crafting.